Cue that beat.
This is what happens. You guys just hear something Eagles, and then it's like a dog. You see a squirrel, it's just,
I would say 75% of all NFL quarterbacks can be dialed down to different flavors of Kirk Cousins. They're all just Kirk Cousins. All of them.
So there's conditions. No, I absolutely understand do not draft list. If someone's on my do not draft list, I'm not drafting him.
What's up, everybody? Welcome into the Mind the Gap podcast. Aaron Palsgrove, Tyler Hill, Ryan Wright. Welcome in. It is a lovely night tonight. It's actually not. It's raining. It's been raining nonstop here. I was driving to my buddy's last night. It was the craziest. For 2 minutes, nothing but the worst rain I've ever driven in. Like, second worst. I've driven in really bad stuff. And then it'd be completely clear and sunny 2 seconds later. Unreal. It feels like the entire East Coast is going through this right now.
Boy, you have not been to Texas.
I mean, yeah, but...
Well, and right now in Champaign, our weather people at the station have been calling this the worst week of weather of the year. So that's where we're at.
Yeah, it's so weird. But, you know what? Dynasty people don't touch grass. The players of Dynasty Fantasy Football don't know what the weather is because they don't get affected by it. And that's what we're going to talk about today. So we have our Dynasty rookie rankings, our top, 40? And then a few honorable mentions we want to hit. We have them tiered. We have them ranked. We have them ready to go. We're going to put them on social media if you want to follow along. But more than that, we're just going to go through them, talk about the biggest players that we like, biggest players we hate. The three of us are also going through a Dynasty rookie draft right now. We are in the third round of a 12-teamer.
We should be done.
We should be done.
But everyone wants to trade their 308 for picks, even though no one wants to trade up.
I think I have the 308. What are you talking? No, I have 3.
Well, we're on the 307 right now, but I'm just throwing it out there. Everybody's like, this pick is available.
Yeah.
It's like, hey, man.
So we'll talk about what's going on in our league as like a sort of barometer, as well as what we've seen on the internet, what we've seen from other people. And we'll definitely talk about our league ad nauseum. But we're just more than that going to talk about these players, what we expect, their potential, their ceiling, their floors. Are they going to be rookie starters? That matters a lot, especially with quarterbacks and running backs. So I think that's all I really need to say as a preface. Do we just want to get started?
Start at the top.
All right, Ashton Genty is our 1-1. He is in a tier of his own. He is the number one player. These rankings are for 2 quarterback leagues in Dynasty with a tight end premium is how we did it. That feels like the current meta of fantasy leagues, at least the ones getting created. So if you're doing a rookie draft, it's likely under these scenarios, but adjust these based on your draft. And as always, draft based on your need, or don't draft based on your need. Do what is good for your team. Ryan has some interesting team building policies when it comes to Dynasty.
Well, I was going to say, I feel like we should get into that first in terms of like talent versus situation. Do you draft for need versus just trying to get good players? And maybe that will then lead us into, okay, that's why we ranked guys like this.
Ryan, you constantly tell me that I'm not building my team the right way. What exactly are your team building policies?
Well, there are many, many things. So for starters, I think you need 2 solid quarterbacks. I drafted Lamar, I think like 103, and then Jaden Daniels last year in our startup at 212, I think I was. So I just hit on those, and I got lucky. But the goal is to build around great wide receivers. You have to have some of the top guys, whether it's A.J. Brown, Puka, Jamar, Jay Jettis. You have to have a solid foundation. Drake London is now one of those guys. It's where the league is.
And the reason for that is that as good as running backs are, like Saquon, right? If you had Saquon, you probably won your league this year, unless you messed up crazy. But it's just volatile because running backs get injured a lot and their primes are short. Like you would rather build around receivers like Ryan is saying because they can play until they're 32, 33, 34 in some cases, depending on their play style. And they just don't get hurt as much during the season.
Yeah, the reason you heard the heavy side from me there is because I have a team with Saquon Barkley and Derrick Henry. Went 12-1 last year and then lost in the championship game in my other Dynasty league, which is devastating.
Yeah, and I say all this because I actually had a very solid wide receiver core, and it just every single time it works. I have Puka, A.J. Brown, and Mike Evans. And on my bench, Cortland Sutton and Jacoby Myers. Jacoby Myers in a now pass-heavy
Is
offense.
this why you're
that's
such a
also
high
gonna run.
Jacoby Myers guy? Is this
Well, okay.
d- is
Gino has always been like top
no, no,
5
no,
in
no.
passing
I'm not saying
yards.
before Gino was there, you were really high on Jacoby Myers. Is this the reason? Is because he did you right in fantasy?
Well, no, he was always the clear one this past year. But beyond that, I'm not really sure where he fits in Pete Carroll's system, especially because they went out and got Besh. But
I think they
we'll
got
see.
Besh as a blocker. He's there in my head. It's
He was a
very
tight end at LSU.
right, and he's one of the best. I think no, he's the best blocking wideout in this class.
So beyond that, tight end, I think you have to have a top 8 tight end.
I was saying you have to have at least a solid tight end, especially in tight end premium.
Yeah, so volume is key.
Sam Laporta, dude. Sam Laporta won leagues 2 years ago, 3 years ago, something like
TJ
that.
Hawkinson, Trey McBride gets so many targets.
Zach Ertz,
And especially if
when he was
McBride, I would say if McBride can convert more than one of those into touchdowns,
exactly.
it's like now we're cooking because he gets so many. You get the PPR points and then your tight end premium on top of it, which seems like a duh thing, but people seem to forget about it and how important. Oh, it's only an extra 0.5. If you get 6 catches, that's 3 more points. That's huge.
Right.
Yeah. And some guys like people don't talk about. Jake Ferguson is literally the number 2 in Dallas. Jonnu Smith, you probably picked him up on waivers last year and got lucky. It's just how it works in Dynasty.
Hunter Henry and Drake May had a weirdly good connection for a few weeks there, and he became very relevant.
And then the last thing I'll say is running back is a luxury. If you have the picks, if you manage your team well, you can spend big. But get guys that are serviceable. Guys like Josh Jacobs, clear number 1 in Green Bay, behind a solid O-line. But Joe Mixon, not a great O-line, but I tried to say it early last year that Joe Mixon was the number 1 running back in the league within like the first 3 weeks. That was great and all until the Texans O-line just looked like they were 5th graders
Imploded.
going up against Alabama. So it's hard to build, but a startup is key. And if you can nail the startup, you're fine. But rebuilds are also great options to pick up some great running backs.
And the biggest thing, if you are doing a startup, just before we get into the rookie draft stuff, have a plan going in of what you're trying to do. Like for me, I think one thing I did wrong in our startup is that I traded with Ryan to go from 103 to 101. I didn't pay like an enormous price, but I wanted to make sure I got Josh Allen. And so that's why I traded up. He's the best value guy in fantasy right now. I would say you guys can disagree if you want.
No, you're right.
At this point in Dynasty, I would say it's Josh Allen. At worst, he's 2 behind Daniels, but he's up there. But then I went young. I took some guys in the middle rounds, like Ladd ended up being good, but I took Ricky Pearsall and some different rookies I liked. And so I think if I had to go back, I might have either leaned more into competing with some of those mid-round picks or not traded up, maybe even traded back and been like, okay, we're going for a rebuild that year. A guy traded for my pick with his 2026 first, right? So if you see how those styles kind of conflict where I'm trying to get up and get a good guy for now.
He pulled in Atlanta Falcons.
Yeah, that was crazy. And so with that, I've gotten into a good spot now through some good trades and some different things, even doing it today. But it set me back at least this year to where I had to change real quick and go, okay, I am not able to compete this year.
We're not going to talk about the mistakes I've made in this specific league as a whole, but I'll let you know that I did trade away Drake May as a team that needs Drake May. Guys, if I had Drake May on this current team, I would feel so much better about where I am.
You'd be cooking.
I'd be great, but I don't have Drake May because I made a really dumb mistake and I still don't know why. I don't even drink. I can't blame the alcohol. I'm allergic to it. Let's get to our tiers and our overall rankings. Number 1, Ashton Jeanty. Tyler?
Real quick. Well, the one thing we didn't talk about, we talked about startup, but some rookie draft strategy. So, because I think the big thing is that situation. How much does where they get drafted, who's on the depth chart, what position are they in, the fit with the scheme versus, hey, I just think this guy is a better player. So I guess that'll be the start for if you guys have either a percentage or just kind of how you guys factor that in.
I mean, we talked about it when we did our show all of last year. Was the number 1 word in fantasy football is volume. you need attempts, at least not at the quarterback position. When you're talking about tight ends, running backs, receivers, the number one thing you need to be fantasy relevant and viable is volume. You need the ability to make mistakes. You need tons of touches, tons of catches, tons of targets. That target number is the consistent one. So if you're looking at someone to draft in a normal redraft league, look at how many targets they got this season and expect or project how many targets they're going to get next season. That's why with a guy like Ted McMillan, who is at the moment the clear number one in Carolina, he's going to get crazy volume, which makes him really fantasy relevant.
For me, when I'm looking at rookie drafts for Dynasty specifically, I wrote down about 70% talent, 30% situation, because I think it's really easy, kind of like you were saying, Aaron, in redraft leagues for 1 year, maybe not really easy because you won't go 100%, but you can realistically say, hey, this is going to be the situation for this year.
Right.
And maybe an injury happens. Maybe, there's some different stuff that can come out of left field. But for 1 year, when you're looking at rosters, that's pretty set. When it comes to Dynasty, you're having these guys for 5, 6, 7 years. I think it's really hard to flush that out and look that far into the future and say, hey, this situation that I'm seeing now is always going to be the situation. So for me, that's why I went 70% talent, 30% situation. Some examples I have of this, both negative and positive. We'll start with negative. Right now I'm thinking Blake Corum. He was supposed to be the heir apparent to Kyron. Kyron wasn't a great analytics guy with some of the stuff that he has in terms of yards per carry, broken tackles, whatever. They took a guy in the 4th round and traded up for him in Jarquez Hunter. Rashad White. Bucky Irving comes in. Rashad White's now on the last year of his rookie deal. He's probably not getting re-upped, and Bucky Irving is taking the majority of that carries. Xavier Legette, you talked about Tedero McMillan, Aaron. Xavier Legette's losing target share. Positively, it's Ricky Pearsall. Debo's traded away. Ayuk's not playing this year. So it is him, Kittle, and Juwan Jennings. McCaffrey might not even be there to take targets. So I think Ricky's situation has improved. Chase Brown, we were worried Zach Moss was going to be the guy in that backfield. He's out. They didn't take a running back this year. And then Terry McLaurin, more in the aspect of he had bad QBs forever. Now he's got Jaden Daniels. So I think when you're looking at stuff like that, situation can change so quickly and flip. And so that's why I just bet on talent. I think in your raw rankings, more you take some into account, but more than where they landed.
Yeah. So like Tyler said, we're going to be talking about talent. We're going to be talking about positional value. We're going to be talking about landing spot. That's going to be the big thing about this podcast is because we've been spending months talking about talent and just our projections about these players. So landing spot and volume are going to be the big two things we're talking about in today's show. Ashton Jeanty is the clear number one because of he hits all three of those categories, right? He's going to get a crazy amount of volume. His landing spot is a very good one with the Raiders offensive line, who is, I think, underrated at the moment, and they did do a decent job to re-up it. And more than that, he's just talented. Dude, he is the most talented player offensively in this entire class, maybe sans Travis Hunter. We'll talk about him later. Is there anything really to talk about, or just if you have the 1-1, take Jeanty?
See, it's a matter of where you are. If you want to rebuild, absolutely trade down because, like I said, running back is a luxury, short shelf life. So all
and
things you got to worry about.
Haul this year for the 1-1.
And I just joined a league today where I have the 101, and I actually also have Gibbs. So now I'm asking people, do you want Jeanty or do you want Gibbs? Because you can't have both. But I'm selling both, and guys, sky's the limit because Jeanty is going to a Raiders offense that has been dying for a running back since Marshawn Lynch. Zamir White didn't really work out. Madison didn't really work out. Sincere McCormick got some touches last year, didn't really pan out. So it's concerning for – no, I shouldn't say concerning. I like the outlook because the Raiders had a really poor efficiency in running the ball. So I don't know if that was – because of scheme or not, but it just looked like they didn't have any juice. So those kind of just go hand in hand. But I'm really excited for the Raiders offense. And if you're looking to trade up, you're going to have to pay a pretty penny.
Yeah. The guy who had 1-1 in our league stuck there, kept it, took Jeanty, which I think is the right call, especially for his team. He needed a guy like Jeanty.
I sent so many good offers, though. I'm genuinely surprised.
We talked about this before the show, though. Half of Dynasty is, yes, it may be a fair trade. Yes, it may be a good offer. Yes, the keep trade cut calculators are like, yeah, okay, that's a fair offer. But you have to decide when are you taking it, when are you not. That's the biggest mistake I made. I traded away Drake May. Fair offer, yeah. Should not have done it in a million years. You got to know what's fair and what's good for your team, and those aren't always the same thing.
I say keep trade cut is not the gospel, right?
Nope.
It's helpful, and you should use it in terms of, okay, I'm not trying to say send this wild trade that makes no sense, and I'm just way off on value. So it's a good thing, I think, to put you in the ballpark. But you also need to value players just yourself, and you need to know what you think about them and what you think they're worth. And the other thing is, it's just okay to say no to trades. Like, it's fine. It's fine to even work on them for a couple hours and then still say no because you can't come to a conclusion. That's okay.
Yeah. Tier 2, Omari and Hampton by himself. These are two tiers that they're not the only tiers we have broken down by themselves. We actually have a few. I think 4 of just single player tiers. And these tiers are based on just our rankings and how the numbers and the math fell for these. So these are mathematical rankings, not rankings we made. Second tier is Omari and Hampton, who is just by himself with Genty. And Tyler, you described Hampton as a guy with elite volume, an elite fit, an elite upside, but there are a few question marks.
Right. So this tier 2, and I have 3 players here for just my personal rankings. I have this as could be elite, but have one question mark. And so for me with Hampton, his question mark at this point is that the interior offensive line for the Chargers is still bad. It was bad last year, and they didn't do anything in the draft or free agency to address it. And so they have 2 very, very good tackles in Slater and Alt. The interior is just not there. And so Greg Roman is a great offensive coordinator.
Does Becton not do it for you?
I don't think he fixes your interior offensive line issues. I'll say that. I think his resurgence was probably more of a product of what was around him and the coaching he had. So he'll get really good coaching with Harbaugh and them. I'm not worried about that, but the surroundings might not be as elite as the Eagles. So that's my one question mark with him. But again, like in one season, that could just easily change. This is Dynasty. That's why he's number 2. Greg Roman is a great run game guy at OC. They have Herbert with a little more weapons now, so they're not going to be stacking the box with 8 guys. So I think he's in a very good situation. That is why I have him at number 2. He's just not in the same tier as Genty because of that one question mark for me.
Yeah. Tier 3, we've talked ad nauseum about these two. They're the most talented running backs in the class. Running back is a luxury, but it is the sprinkles on the cake that takes you from a mediocre middle-of-the-pack team to a contender. So hitting on a running back can be the best thing to ever happen to you, which is why it's scary that Noah got Omari and Hampton. Tier 3, I called this could be elite. There are question marks, however. Not with the however. But Tet McMillan is number 3, Travion Henderson number 4, and Travis Hunter number 5.
Yeah, I would like to argue that Hunter could probably be up there at number 2. Personally, I might actually take Hunter over Hampton just based off situation.
Make the argument.
Yeah.
I mean, Tyler, you already said the Chargers offensive line struggled, but the Chargers are a great team that will always run the ball. It is a run-first offense. But with the Chargers going out and getting some extra targets this year, you never really know how it's going to go. And that's why fantasy is such a crapshoot. You never know. And everyone will act like they do and like project and be like, oh, this is going to no, you don't know. So it's a shot in the dark. But Hunter, I would like to think that he pops off immediately, right out the gate, next to BTJ, because Trevor Lawrence is looking – when was his last contract?
Well, he had his rookie deal, and then he just got the extension.
Okay, so he's not up for another one anytime soon?
No, because I don't even think the extension's kicked in yet.
Okay. Well, anyways, he's probably looking to have a bounce back year. I know we've talked about some quarterbacks that are primes for a bounce back. Trevor Lawrence had guys out there, Gabe Davis, Christian Kirk. But Christian Kirk got I think 3-year or 4-year for like $100 million or something, which was outrageously highway robbery. So he's never had a guy like Travis Hunter though. So I think personally, Hunter might have an argument over Hampton at number 2, but for now, I think Hunter at 3.
I still think Travis Hunter, I think his ceiling on the offense is a wide receiver 2. What we saw from Brian Thomas Jr., what we saw from his connection with Trevor Lawrence, I don't think that Travis is going to supersede him as the wide receiver 1 in Jacksonville. So yes, he might be incredible. But 1, I'm worried about injuries, and 2, I'm worried about, is he going to be the wide receiver 1? I'm not drafting a guy over Amarian Hampton unless he is my surefire, absolutely going to be wide receiver 1.
I think for me, what holds me back, because I have Hampton 2, McMillan 3, wide receiver from Arizona who went to Carolina, and then Hunter 4. He's so awesome. I'm mad that they want to play him full time both ways.
Yes.
That's what holds it back for me. If they said he is full time offense, and even if they said, hey, we're going to play him 15 plays on defense, I think he would be 3 for me, and then would have an argument for 2. I don't know how that works, and I think that really limits what he's able to do on offense from an exhaustion standpoint, from an injury standpoint. And that's with me being a huge Travis Hunter guy. Like, I think that if you put him at one position, he has a very high chance to be that all pro level guy. But with it being 2, I would just be skeptical that they do that. And I wonder, maybe this is just me wish casting. I wonder if they're saying that because he wanted to play 2 ways or both ways a lot. And so maybe they're just trying to make him happy, and then it's going to be a month into camp. They'll be like, actually, I think we're just going to play you at offense, Travis. Sorry. So maybe that happens. But if he's going to play both ways, that makes him lower for me.
Yeah, plain and simple. I agree. It's just the injuries and the endurance bit. I don't have doubt in Travis Hunter as a person. I don't have doubt in him as a player. I have doubt in the human body to be able to withstand that kind of rigorous activities. Travion Henderson, we have at 4. I think he's going to be. I have him personally over Hunter, which I think is what jazzed up our rankings a little bit. I love his upside as a blocking running back, as a pass catching running back, as a 3-4 down running back in New England with Drake May. He is what May needed, and I would have taken him absolutely without hesitation if Noah Willard hadn't traded up right before me and snatched him. I was very offended. But yeah, so that would be our tier 3: McMillan, Henderson, Hunter.
Sucks to suck.
Yeah.
Plain and simple.
Just airing out grievances.
I do have grievances, and I did text him immediately that I was rather mad. Tet McMillan, Tyler, you are now a proud Tet McMillan owner in our Dynasty league.
Cheers.
Oh, yeah. Because I love the pairing of Canales, who worked with Mike Evans, and while they're not exactly the same player, they are very similar. I love his skill set with the other receivers, and he's the best out of all of them. He is better than Leggett. They spent way more draft capital on him than Leggett. I like Jalen Coker. He was an undrafted free agent. Adam Thielen is 35. So he, at this point, is going to get a lot of volume, and a guy who knows how to use this type of receiver. And my question mark, I think, with him is, are we sure Bryce is the guy? I think he can be good enough to buoy McMillan and let him get enough targets to where it won't be killing him that Bryce Young is his quarterback. But that is, I think, a genuine question mark. We saw more out of Bryce at the back part of the season, but that was like 6 games. Are we sure that this is who he's going to be now?
My biggest question with McMillan is not the same one as yours. We've had question marks, and I think the media as a whole has had question marks going into this Tet McMillan experience. It might have just been draft fatigue. It might have just been talking ourselves in circles about a player who is fantastic. But I moved him up and down my rankings 3 or 4 or 5 times, right? I said Luther Burns my wide receiver 1. I questioned Matthew Golden. I said is Tet even in the top 3 of receivers? There was so many questions about Tet as a player, and if this is like your wide receiver 1 kind of guy. He's not a Jamar Chase, right? We knew this going in. Is Tet good enough to avoid being superseded by whoever comes after him?
I think Tet is going to be a volume heavy guy. I had him in the 20s in my big board.
I was like, you were 22 for the final one.
Right.
Yeah, so I think his goal, Tyler, in drafting Tet is a big volume guy, because I don't think Leggett is going to get a ton of touches now, because Thielen, I hate to say it's probably still wide receiver 2.
Sorry, JPA just posted that the Falcons are expecting a breakout season from Kyle Pitts in 2025. Says their OC.
Aren't we all? Aren't we all?
Dude, if you did not sell high on Kyle Pitts, I do not feel bad for you.
That would be awful. But my biggest thing about Tet is in Dynasty, you're drafting to have a guy, ideally, the way Dynasty is meant to work for their whole career. Do we think Tet is going to be a wide receiver 1 for...
Well, Thielen's 34. Hunter Renfrow just came back after a year off. And I would even like to argue, guys, that Hunter Renfrow is wide receiver 3 over Leggett. but that's just a personal opinion. Derwin James literally thinks like he's the best route runner in the league.
Yeah, for me, I'm not worried about them, I guess, bringing in somebody over McMillan because they already spent basically a first last year on Leggett. And then
Yeah.
now they spent a top 10
No,
pick
it was
on
a first. They took
McMillan.
Leggett in the first round.
Was it
It was
32?
like 31 or 32, yeah.
Oh, okay, sorry. I thought it was 33.
No, because the Panthers did not have a first rounder traded into the
but
first
you're
round
right.
to
They
get
traded
Leggett.
up. Yep, totally. You are right. So they've now spent a first round pick and a top 10 pick on a receiver. And even at that slot position, once Thielen's gone and even if Renfro doesn't work out, I think Coker's the guy there. So I think they're fine in terms of
I
their
think-
weapons.
Yeah, I agree. I think that they have 5 realistic receivers names, but at the moment, I wouldn't categorize any of them as more than a jag besides McMillan, just a guy.
Which is perfect. You want to get that volume. I guess in
Right.
terms of ceiling, and you guys can disagree here, I think he can be a top 10 dynasty receiver. Like, I think he can get into, right now, we're talking about Drake London is at 9, Nico Collins is at 8. I think McMillan can work himself into that range. I don't think he's Chase. I don't think he's Jefferson, but fairly could get into the top 10.
Yeah, I think so. Ceiling wise, you're right. All right. So tier 4 is a single player, one of our third single player tier. Cameron Ward, quarterback out of Miami, now the Tennessee Titans starter. Ryan, me and you, as well as some other guys in our league, had a debate in the league-wide group chat on our app talking about Cam Ward specifically. What is his value? What is his worth as a starting quarterback with a really low floor and a really high ceiling? We have him as our 6th best player for Superflex drafts. Where are you on him?
Saying really low floor and really high ceiling just feels wrong because that's a majority of players in the league, but it does apply in this case. I think personally, I would be comfortable taking him at 106, but I would prefer 107. I think the situation is right. He doesn't have direct competition with Will Levis, but if Ward goes down, Levis steps up.
Which Ryan is trying to get Levis in trade. He wants Levis to be traded to somebody so bad.
I did not capitalize on selling Levis last year, and
Dude, that's a cut.
I was trying to use him in order to get a third starting quarterback, and then Aaron showed out of nowhere and wanted to trade Tua for Spencer Rattler in a third.
Yeah, I don't want to talk about it.
So
I don't want to talk about it.
I completely forgot about it. I was like, oh,
I made
might
2
need a
mistakes
fourth
in this league, and
quarterback.
they're both about quarterbacks.
I got fricked last year with bye weeks. So, guys, I know we might not be like, oh, let's worry about bye weeks.
No, you only worry about bye weeks and redraft.
I got screwed. I think I had maybe 6 or 7 players all out week 14.
Last week, bye week, I think 14 was the bye week hell, where it just everybody hit at the same time, especially
think it was
in
the last
fantasy football.
one.
I think so, yeah. And they just
It
stacked
was
a
all
bunch
good
there.
offenses that were
Yeah.
out. It was like, I don't know if this were actually the teams, but it was teams like the Vikings, the Lions, the Eagles that had so many fantasy relevant guys that were also on bye week. So
It was a brutal stretch. But yeah, Ryan, Cam, back to point.
Guys, he doesn't have any weapons still.
Yeah.
I would like to say that he
Elevator
does.
manner deletion.
Come on, dude. If you're going out and getting the first overall pick, Cam Ward, that's great. Second round, I would like you to probably add a receiver there, but you didn't.
Who'd they trade? Who'd they get with their second rounder?
I forget. Dang it. Now I'm not remembering. I want to say they went defense a couple times, but
I thought so.
that's what you count on, right?
Oladejo.
Oh, yes. A reach.
Because I went
Trey Harris was available.
I don't want to talk about that.
Actually, there wasn't a ton available. I'm not going to lie. Now that I'm looking about it.
but I
Kyle
think-
Williams,
I think-
Tesla.
but they
Trey
had
hit-
O-linemen too they could have taken.
Right, but Trey Harris was the big one, right? I think he especially in now Los Angeles is going to be fantastic.
And we will get to him. But for Ward, I think it comes down to, do you trust the Tennessee Titans as an organization and Brian Callahan as a coach? Because as of now, I think they've put him in a situation that is not horrible. It's not what the Patriots were last year. They have a decent O-line that could even be good depending on how the rookies and younger guys develop. And overall, Brian Callahan has put together some good offenses, but they don't have weapons. It's not fully formed. And so you have to trust the organization to continue to build around him. And that's where it just gets to, I don't know, right? Because they've not shown the ability to do that. And Brian Callahan is a first-time head coach. So we'll see. I think he's fine to go anywhere from, I think Ryan hit on it, 105 to 106, just depending on who's gone, who's still on the board, your need at the position. But you are making a bet here, and probably a riskier bet than even some quarterbacks or some 101s in the past.
Yeah, and I thought Brian Callahan was some quarterback guru, and that's why I drafted Will Levis in the 10th round of his startup. But they invested a second-round pick in him, and it did not pan out. So I'm really concerned about
Is Callahan
just
a
projection.
quarterback guru, or is he just
What happened is he coached Joe Burrow.
Yeah, that's it. I think
and so that
Quarterback
that's
guru.
that's where again, we'll see, because again, Joe Burrow played pretty well. They did have to develop an offense for him, so let's not completely discount that, because coaching does matter with quarterbacks. But I think the jury is still out as to maybe the level of offensive mind that he is.
Josh Allen got Brian Dable a job, and he has kept it for longer than he probably should have. Tier 5, they are correctly numbered now. Tier 5, I have tight ends and Quinshawn. It's a new rap group. Colson Loveland, Quinshawn Judkins, Tyler Warren at 7, 8, 9. Colson Loveland, Chicago. Quinshawn Judkins, Cleveland, and Tyler Warren, Indianapolis. Those are 2 starting tight ends. Colson Loveland, I think, is more of a question mark to start because of Cole Kmet. But for the sake of this, I think he's going to be a starter at least definitely next year, likely this year. And Quinshawn Judkins is the starter. Nick Chubb likely to be traded in Cleveland. I love Loveland. He is the guy to me that feels like the kind of hipster pick, but the correct hipster pick with what is going on and what is happening in Chicago. I trust Ben Johnson to use the tight end to like him, a very typical standard tight end receiver with his skill set.
Well, in Chicago, correct me if I'm wrong, but they're going to be running a lot of 12 personnel, so 2 tight end sets. So you have the upside of Loveland possibly being the first option there over Kmet. But you got to remember that there's lots of options in Chicago now. Now Luther Burden. You already had Odunze. You had Keenan Allen, who I think is still a free agent. But
DJ Moore.
DJ Moore, who everyone's like, oh, that's literally Luther Burden 2.0. That is DJ Moore. So I'm concerned about volume right now. But again, it's Dynasty. You could be looking 3-4 years down the line and still be okay. So nothing's definitive here, but Loveland at 7 might be a little too sweet for my liking. I might take Judkins over Loveland personally. But Tyler Warren at 9, I think that's some great value right there.
I would say I had Warren over Loveland.
I had Loveland over Warren.
Man, so I just liked Warren more as a prospect, and that's where it goes into talent versus situation, because I think right now people are slamming Warren's situation. I think his first-year situation is way better than people think. He's going to get fed in the RPO and the screen game, which the Colts do a ton with Richardson, with Steichen developing that offense. And then if AR-15, Anthony Richardson, if he doesn't play well this year, he's gone. And so automatically now you're resetting into a new quarterback. So I think you could say right now, you could argue whether the Bears is a better situation than the Colts. I still think the Colts are a better situation to get Warren volume. And then in terms of just pure passing down the field, either Richardson gets better or he's gone. And so you'll get a new QB there. So that's why I had Warren higher.
Quinshawn Judkins, he is the presumed starter in Cleveland with Nick Chubb projected to leave. And I feel like he's just a fantastic player. He's going to be a starting running back in the league for 5-6 years, and that will decide his floor or his ceiling. Tier 6, we are going to start off with Tyler's guy, Emeka Ibuka, and Tyler's other guy, Matthew Golden, Caleb Johnson, and then RJ Harvey, which is something that Ryan, you said you wanted to talk about. We'll get to him in a second. Ibuka. This feels like a very much of a stash pick in Dynasty leagues where he's not probably not going to get a top 3 target share this season.
It's the perfect pick if you have the last pick in the first round. He's lasting there from what it seems in most mocks. And If you're picking last, I'm assuming you're going to be good for another 2-3 years. And that's when his prime is going to hit, when Mike Evans is gone, Chris Godwin's contract is up, and it will be him, McMillan, and Bucky Irving. So as long as you have that time to wait the 2 or 3 years, he'll pay it off for you.
Right behind him is Matthew Golden, who is in the offense where they said they would never have a number one receiver after Devontae Adams left, and it says, Matt LaFleur said, it makes him nauseous.
Yeah, Tyler and I actually had a conversation about this because I was in a league where I had the 205 and Golden was still on the board somehow.
Oh, I would smash that.
I know. I was looking to possibly trade back, but the guy at 206 owns a monopoly on the league, so I couldn't let Golden fall to him. But I actually had to text Tyler. I was like, would you put your life on Matthew Golden? Because, I was not on as high on him as Tyler was. I think I had him like 34 or something on the big board. So I asked him, I was like, are you worried about the height in Green Bay? Are you worried about the crowded wide receiver room? He's like, dude, honestly, no. Like, the talent is going to reign supreme. And that's just what the Green Bay offense lacks. So I could actually see him sliding in many drafts like he did to me. But 111 is not bad. I personally would not let him slide past 2, 3
Yeah.
if I saw it.
Because at that point, the uncertainty of the wide receiver room, that's priced in. You're not taking him at 106 or 107. You're taking him with a second round pick where, I think his talent gets him to be a high end number 2. Think Jordan Addison, Devontae Smith, or a low end 1. I wrote down Cortland Sutton or Michael Pittman, not play comps, but just in terms of role in an offense. The Green Bay wide receiver room has a lot of guys. None of them are reliable.
They're
Christian
guys.
Watson
They're
had
just-
an ACL injury.
Just guys right now.
And all the other ones are just guys. Jaden Reed's cool. He's a gadget guy.
He's a wide receiver too.
Dontavian Wicks can separate. He can't catch. Romeo Dobbs, Bo Melton. These guys are not.
Thinks he's a 1, but is
Yeah.
really a 3.
Dobbs is
And
the
so-
opposite of Wicks in the fact that he can't separate, can catch.
Right. And so none of these guys, I think, should stop Golden from getting a good amount of targets. And we'll see what that actually ends up being. I think Jordan Love bounces back this year because he got injured in week 2 and was never the same. He had 3 different injuries last year, guys. Like, I think that just affected that offense a ton. If Love is healthy, Matt LaFleur cooks, and now you got Golden on the outside that is way more reliable than any guy they've ever had. If he falls somehow to the second round, that's a smash select for me.
I was just fantasizing about the idea of combining the best parts of each Packers receiver. You get the speed of Christian Watson, the agility in the rack of Jaden Reed, the hands of Romeo Doubs, and the separation of Dontavian Wicks, and you have yourself Jamar Chase.
And you're cooking.
Yeah.
You're cooking with gas.
But they have it in 4 guys, and they just drafted Matthew Golden to be their 5th. It's unreal, and you still have 2 tight ends who I think are both starters in this league in Musgrave and Kraft. I need Musgrave to pop off this season. Caleb Johnson is going to be the starter in Pittsburgh, very similar to Judkins. He will determine his own floor because volume is going to come his way. RJ Harvey is the starter in Denver. Sean Payton is a fantasy savant in the fact that he gives good players good snaps, and he gives the good players. He's nice to fantasy owners across the board. He made Alvin Kamara the best fantasy pick in the last decade. He is the one who made Cortland Sutton and Marvin Mims fantastic last year for Denver. And now he is RJ Harvey, who is an explosive athlete, undersized, but he is a receiving back who is now in a Sean Payton offense. Ryan, you don't like this pick, and you would not have him. We have him at 13, which would be the 1 or the 2-1. He's going in drafts, I believe, in between 1-8 and 1-12. How do you feel this ended up? Do you think our ranking of him is accurate?
So my dilemma here is, I was trying to find his college stats. So Tyler said in the very beginning that he thinks that this should be 70% of talent, 30% situation. He's in a great situation. I genuinely thought the Broncos were going to get Hampton, but they let him fall to get Barron.
I love that Barron pick. It's building on strengths, dude. It's gorgeous.
Yeah. So I'm looking at the stats of him at UCF, and they're great. There's nothing to nitpick here. He had some receiving targets, but not a ton. But he's absolutely serviceable in that area. What I'm concerned about is the fact that in our big board, I think I had him mid 80s, maybe even 90s. So talent wise, like he was never going to be the number one prospect. We always thought it was going to be Jempty, Hampton, and then Company.
Hmm. The
I don't
tier
think
of
any
Johnson, Henderson, Quinchon.
I don't think anyone put money on RJ Harvey to be the third running back off the board, especially in the second round. I think his ADP is inflated because of where he got drafted in the second round. Again, great team. I just don't think he has amazing talent. He's not the fastest guy out there. I was just looking at his combine stats. They're okay. Nothing's popping off.
Which was surprising because he on tape was flying. And then even in some of the combine drills, he had some of the highest miles per hour, but then he didn't run a very good 40.
8.94 RAS, a 38 vert, 10.7 broad, 40-yard dash of 4.4, and a 1.52 10-yard split. Still very above average in the 40 and the 10-yard, but
I
not.
see a 1.57 10-yard split. So again, some disparity there.
My bad. It's an unofficial split, 1.52.
But in terms of, we talked about how good this fit is. Guys, the Broncos generated the most yards before contact of any team in the league and the least after contact of any team in the league.
It was a running back disparity for them. Plain and simple.
Like I took Javonte Williams thinking that he would be able to do something in that situation. He did not. And so it's prime for a running back to come in and thrive. I think more than anything, the fact that they took him in the 60s in terms of picks, that says a lot of what they're investing in him. And we'll probably get him a lot of touches. This is a guy that I think if you're taking him in those last two picks of the second round, or of the first round, and then the first two picks of the second round, that is a perfectly acceptable range to move him up based on situation, and you're pricing that incorrectly, I would say.
Right, the NFL tells you, and teams will tell you what they think of a player based on where they drafted him, and they drafted him higher than consensus had him because they love him that much. I think that is the last player in our tier. Either of you guys want to hit on Ibuka or Golden or Johnson before we move on?
I was just going to say, I think Johnson is also in a great situation. I think he will be the bell cow in Pittsburgh. Everyone keeps talking about Warren, but again,
but is he going to play with Mason Rudolph? Like, he surely is not going to play with Mason Rudolph as his quarterback, right?
I am so concerned about that
that's
situation.
Not good, huh?
It's Aaron Rodgers or Will Howard, one of the two of them.
Oh my goodness, because that was
sleeper
the one
pick right there.
Yeah, that's true. Me and Ryan were texting about sleeper pick Will Howard.
I would take Will Howard with the last pick of a redraft league. I got to be honest, depending on the Rodgers situation.
I have 412.
I love it. Tier 7 is our final single player tier. It is Luther Burden. I have this listed as higher ceiling, lower floor than the last guys, where I think Burden he's the eye test for me. If he looks like one of the best athletes on the field, if he looks like DJ Moore 2.0, if he looks like he could catch a ball and juke you out your socks, he was absolutely worth the selection. If he gets on the field and looks like he does not know how to play receiver, and he is Kadarius Toney, he was not worth your selection. This is the moment he steps on the field, you are going to know if you hit or missed on this pick, in my personal opinion.
The other thing, unfortunately, there were some concerns in terms of maybe his character and kind of where he's at with his head.
His maturity,
And I wonder right now, I have him as the 5th option this year in Chicago because I have DJ Moore, Ramadunze, Colson Loveland, and then Cole Kmet probably. And they even get, and I was going to say they even give Swift touches. So he's 5.
Ben Johnson hates
6.
DeAndre Swift. I think Swift is going to be shadow benched.
Shadow ban. Kyle Monangai, then maybe their 7th round pick out of Rutgers. But I guess that's because if he's similar to Egbuka, where I think his payoff is going to be a couple years down the line.
Right.
And is he going to be okay waiting for that? And maybe he gets into camp and just takes the spot from DJ Moore. He's way better. We'll see. But you're making a bet there, and you are, like Aaron said, betting on that upside because I think the offense is going to be in a great situation. Can he last to where he gets to be that 2nd, 3rd option?
Yeah, Brett Coleman was on the Mina Kimes show featuring Lenny. I gotta always shout out Lenny when I shout out that show. And he said something that I thought was really interesting, that there's a difference when it comes to NFL scouting between maturity concerns and character concerns. Character concerns can sometimes include legal troubles, whereas maturity concerns is locker room, film room, football field. And I think Burden fits the latter, where you are worried about him as a player, more than as a person. And you're worried about his ability to lock in more than you are his ability to stay out of trouble.
Yeah, because I talked to a guy who I know who he's from East St. Louis, which is where Luther Burden is from. He actually knows him and his family. He's not like best friends with him, but that community, from what he says, is pretty close. And a lot of people know each other in that community. And he said that it's not that he is, again, like kind of honestly exactly what you said, Aaron. It's not that he is, in a gang and like selling drugs on the side and going to get popped for sexual assault or anything like that. He's like, hey, a lot of these guys, East St. Louis is just not a great area. And so they're dealing with a lot there. And what you come out of, there's a video that I was watching where he's like, yeah, this is the place where I used to live and it's not great. And you see a lot of things that unfortunately young kids shouldn't see. And so you come out of that and that can mess with you. And so I think it's more of that. And the good thing that I wrote down is Ben Johnson dealt with Jameson Williams, who is friends and from that same area as Luther Burden. And so Ben Johnson seems to have a really good rapport with the players. Everyone who he's talked to, I got to interview a Lions player who came down to this area of Illinois to talk to a school, and like nothing but amazing things to say about Ben Johnson and how he handles players. And so I think from that perspective, he probably landed in the best situation possible, but I'm rooting for him personally. And I hope, hey, he's able to make it, because the talent, as we've said through and throughout this whole process, the talent is there to be a really, really good receiver.
Yeah. As someone who took him in our Dynasty League, I am also rooting for him very heavily. He won't be leaving the taxi squad until he proves that he doesn't deserve to be there, though. Tier 8, capital, all caps, Dart throws. And this includes Jaden Higgins, Jackson Dart, Jalen Knoll, Trey Harris, Cam Scadaboo. From numbers 15 through 19, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19. Higgins, Dart, Knoll, Jalen Noel, Knoll, Trey Harris, Cam Scadaboo.
Did you like that demonstration?
I did. That was good.
That was great.
Throwing darts.
Yeah, throwing darts. Let's start with the dart in the room, which would be Jackson, who is probably, this is again for Dynasty. He is not the starter this year in New York. But I think the realistic thing is, with how quickly football teams move and the fact that you don't want to get fired, he's probably going to see the field this season and probably be the full-time starter by the end of next.
It's interesting. I put him at 17, and I wrote down I don't want to put him there, but I feel like I have to.
Yes.
At that point, he's a first-round quarterback.
Yeah.
And in Dynasty, if you hit on a quarterback, that's huge. And so I guess you probably can't let him fall past probably mid-second rounds. I think 2.6, 2.7, stuff like that. And I, on this podcast, have talked about the whole year how I don't like Jackson Dart, but I definitely could be wrong. And again, that's why I feel like you have to take him here, is just because of the first-round quarterback value. Sneakily, though, Aaron, kind of as you were talking, I feel like the worst-case scenario for him is
starting at the end of the season.
Well, even more than that, Giants have a bad year. Brian Daboll, Joe Shane gets fired. New regime comes in. Do they want a Jackson Dart? And that is not out of the realm of possibility, I think, at all.
So
and
we're basically wasted a second-round pick, too.
Yeah. And honestly, Ryan, this is exactly what happened to Will Levis. Will Levis got taken, new regime comes in, they try it, they don't really like what they see, and then Will Levis is a backup now. Like, I can see that happening very easily.
I think that was the second time that had happened in Tennessee too, with Malik Willis being the prior. Tennessee they are moving so quickly off of coaches that quarterbacks can't keep up.
I think they did that in fear, though, of the Rams taking one at 26. So they must have had some intel that they're looking for a Matthew Stafford,
which I mocked in mock 1.0. Mm-hmm. Suck it.
Well,
continue.
and that's fine, but that doesn't prevent the new regime from being like, that's cool that they traded up for you and wanted you instead of the Rams taking you. We didn't do that. And so that's the fear I have. And I won't be drafting Jackson Dart. If I'm in whatever position, that mid-second round, like we were saying, and I feel like value-wise I have to take him, I'm going to try and trade out. I don't want to take Jackson Dart. I think I obviously could be wrong, but it just screams Will Levis to me.
Yeah. There's a real possibility that Dart just absolutely flames out and they get a quarterback next season with a new head coach and a new GM. It's a very real possibility. I'd say it's like 45% chance that it happens. There's a smaller percentage that Dart is good immediately and saves the jobs of both Shane and Daboll. but that's the one that you're banking on if you're taking him in the second round.
Which of the Iowa State receivers do you guys like better? Because I had them right next to each other, but I had Knoll at 15, Higgins at 16. Where did you guys land with that?
I think it's a coin flip just because of Nico Collins. So I completely could see a scenario where Knoll does become the number 2. I don't think Tank Dell is coming back this season. I think the Texans are planning on that scenario.
I wrote down that same note. I think this signals that he's unfortunately done, which
For the
is
season,
sad
yeah.
because he's a fun player to watch. He's been through so much, but I think they're probably out of the Tank Dell business.
Yeah. But long term, guys, if Higgins hits, they might not need they might not need Nico Collins.
Might not need.
Might not need.
Might not need. Knoll might not need. I feel like there's a way to make a tongue twister here. We need to keep on trucking.
Well, for me, when I look at the two, and I think they're about even as a prospect, I think I ended up with Knoll slightly ahead. But guys, I just think he beats out Christian Kirk for the slot role this year. I think he's just more explosive and going to be better in that role than Kirk is. A lot of people comped him to Christian Kirk, and he's younger, faster, more explosive. Now, both of them is, I think, their potential, as you said, Ryan, capped by Nico. They're not going to be the number 1 receiver for sure. But I think that affects Higgins on the outside, on the other side, more than it does Knoll in the slot, doing some different things. So for me, that's why I have Knoll a tad higher, even though he was drafted later. I think he's a slightly better player and in a more ideal role with the Texans.
Yeah, I could absolutely see them kind of like crossing career paths where if Nico does leave eventually because of age and money concerns, and Higgins becomes the one, then I could see a scenario where this would be a great pick. What would this be? 203? Yeah. And then Knoll going 205 is perfectly acceptable for a starting slot in the league. But I do want to say be very cautious about the Tank Dell injury. So Trey Harris, though, guys.
Yeah, well, because he's the next receiver. Because for me, so it goes, and then we talked about Dart. I have Scatabo, Trey Harris, Mason Taylor, Bayshaw Tootin, and Elijah Arroyo as the next 5. And so I don't know, Ryan, if any of those really pique your interest. You talked about Harris. You can go in on him.
I like Arroyo. I'm not going to lie.
I'm there, too, with you. Yeah.
He might have gotten one of the best tight end situations. I know they had Fant and Barner. But, guys, Fant's on his, the last year of his contract.
And Barner's a blocking tight end.
Arroyo was raved over for his extensive route tree. It's just one of the things that everyone loved at Miami. He's fast. He's big. I don't know what more you could want out of a second-round tight end. Personally, that is some great value, and I'm hammering him over the latter, which would be Mason Taylor and Ferguson.
Yeah, there is not a teardrop in our rankings. Like, it doesn't say Elijah Arroyo teardrop. It says Elijah Arroyo, Mason Taylor. But positionally, Elijah Arroyo, there's a massive teardrop between Ferguson and Taylor. And right behind Taylor, we have Sampson, Jalen Milroe, Kyle Williams out of New England. Or not out of New England, but currently in New England, out of Washington State. Right? Yeah, I think. Yes. Jalen Milroe is, I think, an interesting guy. Very similar to Luther Burden in the way that he is a running quarterback. Luke Burden's not a quarterback, but Milroe is a running quarterback with a very, very... He's talented as a quarterback in general. I think he just has a very high upside. The question is, can he be an NFL quarterback? So that's why we have him here at 25, which puts him, I believe, as the first pick of the third round if you have a 12-team draft at 3-1. He's a fantastic stash quarterback. You draft him, you put him on your bench, you put him in your taxi squad, and you say you are not doing anything until Sam Darnold is gone. But when Sam Darnold is gone, I think Milroe could be a real starter in the NFL, and you just have to hold on to him and pray that it comes true the way you want it to.
Yeah, because we talk about dart throws. He's the ultimate one in this classic quarterback where the upside, because of his athleticism, his arm strength, I think even the coaching staff that he's with, it is so high. Yep. But he also is just an extremely raw passer. Like, accuracy goes so up and down, doesn't see the field super well, has boneheaded turnovers. And so you're just along for the ride, but Aaron, when you're saying, top of the third round or even mid third round, that's priced in. And so
Right.
I think that is a perfectly good place to take that. And man, if you hit at that spot, that wins you championships. If he turns into a even just top 10 quarterback and you took him in the third round, that's huge.
I took him at 212, and I am so good with that. I am ecstatic to have someone who I think there's a real chance is a quarterback of the future on my bench and on my taxi squad for the next while. Cam Scatabo and Jalen and Trey Harris are the last guys in these categories. I think Harris is the clear wide receiver 2 in Los Angeles. Cam Scatabo is the clear running back 2 in New York behind Tyrone Tracy.
I was so sad to see him go to the Giants because
Really?
I wanted him so bad to just be a workhorse because he's got the build for it. He runs so hard. I think he could have been, handling his own backfield, but I guess there's not a lot of those these days where it's just one running back in the backfield. And unfortunately, he probably tanks his value by going there and then also tanks Tyrone Tracy's value.
Scatterbo going 111 in our draft.
Oh, dude.
Please. Yeah, because I honestly, if he would have gone, I'm trying to think of which situation maybe he could have gone in. I guess if he went to Denver, right? If he went to Denver, I think 111's in play for him for sure. But he's the RB2 or the RB1 sharing a ton of carries in New York. Like that's not something you take in the first round.
If Los Angeles hadn't taken Hampton and took like Colston Loveland, like they talked about, and then took Scatabo, like the Chargers, I think that would be where you take him 111.
True.
But tier 11, or no, tier 10. This is tier 10, which we named depth pieces that if a few things could hit, if a few things that broke their way, they could hit. Alec Manor, 27, Terrence Ferguson, Jarquez Hunter, Harold Fannin Jr. at 30, Jalen Royals, Ryan Sky at 31, and Tyler Shuck at 32. I believe we are way lower on Shuck than most boards I've seen, but that's okay.
He's 26. Like, what
right,
are you thinking, guys? Unless you're a contender, you are not drafting Shuck.
Because I even think if they end up
bet on him being a starter.
Yeah, and I think if they end up early in next year's draft, I'm not guaranteed that they don't just take a quarterback in the top 10.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? And so I don't know. I'm just not high on him.
This is the year for Kellen Moore to build his offense and to build his culture and to build how he wants to be as a head coach, and then next year bring in quarterback of the future. Alec Manor, he's going to be playing with Cam Ward. I don't think he's not good enough to overcome the rest of that Titans offense. Terrence Ferguson and Jarquez Hunter in Los Angeles for the Rams. They're two guys that I think Ferguson for me is going to be a sleeper in redraft. I don't know if he's a sleeper in Dynasty because of Sean McVay desperately wanting a tight end. And Jarquez Hunter Ryan is a guy that you like and you're high on him.
Guys, I think this is a sweet spot because I got Hunter and Royals 303 and then 305 if you flip them. But I really like this value. You probably traded down at the end of the second round if you were a contender and got the high third for this. Royals, I'll start with great situation. Couldn't be more happy about the landing spot because of Patrick Mahomes. It's a crowded wide receiver room, but it's also a very mid wide receiver room where some of those wide receivers probably should be wide receiver 3s. I think Royals should be a 1. I still, to this day, don't even think Worthy is a 1.
He's not, and Rice probably isn't either, and then Kelsey's on the way out. So there is some targets up for grabs there.
So that's a great landing spot, but Hunter, Aaron, I actually pawned Corum off for you, but you could probably flip him. But Hunter, the reason I drafted him was I looked at the explosive play rate, and on top of the fact that the Rams actually traded up to get him, so they were like set on him. But Corum and Williams have struggled with explosive play rates because just in that offense, the contact balance is not there. They're primarily running between the tackles. So there's not a ton of breakaway situations. Hunter was the bell cow behind Bigsby at Auburn. And I don't think I had him like insanely high on our big board. I think I had him right outside the top 100.
Yeah.
But guys, that is a great situation where you have a team trading up for a player That's you just know it's going to work out. I mean, it's the same situation with Isaac Tesla in Detroit, trading I think what 3/3 to get him or something insane. So you have to keep an eye out on those things in the draft because I think when a team has their eyes set on someone, you know that they're going to be heavily involved. It may not be in the first year, but it's a volume thing.
It's the investment in the player because
Yes.
I mentioned this earlier, but Kyron Williams, when you look at some of his analytics, they're not great in terms of yards after contact, broken tackles, explosive play rate. There's some stuff where he's high 20s in the league, and so I wonder if the Rams are sitting there saying, "Hey, we can kind of just plug anybody here and do about the same." And so that's not a guarantee for sure, but Kyron's coming up on the end of his rookie deal. And so I wonder, do they just want to flip another cheap option in there? They obviously have a lot invested in him, Ryan, as you're talking about with the trade up. So it's not a guy that they're going to get rid of. And so right now it does come to a 2-horse race of I think either Corum or Hunter is going to be that heir apparent. And we'll see who ends up winning that job.
I think that's something that they just brought in competition for Corum. I think that was what Hunter is and someone who could realistically win the job. Harold Fannin Jr., tight end 2 in Cleveland behind David Njoku, which I think is the perfect landing spot for him as a more receiving tight end behind the Njoku's typical blocking inline tight end. And I trust Stefanski to do something cool with that once they figure out quarterback. Tier 11 and our final tier behind honorable mentions, waiver pieces. Jadon Blue, Trevor Etienne, DJ Giddens at 33, 34, 35. Jordan James in San Francisco, one of my personal favorite picks. Devin Neal, Pat Bryant, Torrey Horton, and Woody Marks. A lot of guys there. I say each one of you take a few minutes and talk about one of them because we have been talking for a little over an hour at this point, and there's a lot of Jags in that group.
Yeah, at this point, it really is kind of situation because as much as I love Damian Martinez, that's a crowded backfield in Seattle, right? And so it's tough to work around that. I think
one of our honorable mentions, Damian Martinez.
Yeah, and so I think Torrey Horton for me is a guy I look at and really like. I really liked him as a prospect. I had him in my top 100. I was very surprised to see him fall to the 5th round coming out of Colorado State. He had a really good game against Colorado 2 years ago, and then he got injured this past year. And so he's fine. He ran a 40 to the full combine, but just didn't play really much of last year. And so really good short intermediate guy. And you're telling me, hey, Cooper Kupp and JSN, isn't that really similar? Yeah, but I don't think Cooper Kupp's long for this league. And so this is another guy where this is a late round pick, 4th rounder. You're taking a chance on him to say, hey, Cooper Kupp's got a year, maybe 2 left in him, and then Horton ends up taking that spot.
I was looking at Giddens and Neal. I think those are some great situations, as well as Woody Marks. I mean, going to the Texans. But Giddens is probably a play away from being the starter there in Indy. I don't think Khalil Herbert has much to his game that can be utilized. Devin Neal, a little bit of a slower back, but had a very productive career at Kansas. I think we were all fairly high on him in the draft in terms of talent. He just kind of fell a little bit in the draft. It's just how it worked out. But Kendre Miller hasn't really done a whole lot. Alvin Kamara, Adrian Guy. Guys, Devin Neal might be the real thing if you can get him late.
He might be a next year bell cow in New Orleans.
Absolutely. And then I don't want to show my full hands.
No. We're on the podcast. We show our hands here, and then we forget everything. Can't use it against each other.
All right. Well, if you guys draft any of these guys on the waiver wire, I will hold it against you for the rest of your life.
Well, here's the deal. I mean, maybe we like these guys too, but go ahead.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Will Howard, again, great situation. Probably the best out of anyone in the class right here in terms of position. But I just love this for everyone, for the Steelers, for Will Howard. It was a great matchup. I could totally see him end up being the starter if no one signs. I expect them to sign a veteran. I just don't know who yet. Ollie Gordon, great landing spot in Miami. Again, this is still a mix of talent and landing spot, but when you get down so low, you really do have to think about who's ahead of them in the depth chart.
Yeah, this is where I think the scale shifts to where now it's more 50-50 or maybe even 60% landing spot, because if you're getting taken in the 6th round, this is maybe a harsh way to say it. It's not because you're this ultra talented guy.
Right.
Yeah. You could take a flyer on Ollie Gordon on waiver wire. I really don't think someone might draft him at the very end of the 4th round, but I don't know how likely that is.
But he's
Sharp
the one running back
Smith.
they have that's over 200 pounds. So he's got to get some touches, maybe some goal line work. Who knows?
Gordon also feels like a hipster pick, like one that the Dynasty nerds are loving, and I'm kind of on board with that. Him and Jordan James are two guys I like.
Yeah. Bashard Smith converted wide receiver to running back in the Chiefs offense. So who really knows what's going to happen there? But Pacheco, not a clear one anymore. I think people are a little concerned about, I think it was the knee. And then Kareem Hunt, also aging player. No one really knows what's going to happen there. So again, dynasty sleepers, these are them. Restrepo pairing up with Cam Ward back in Nashville. Talked about Tisla. Another sleeper, Taj Brooks. I was a little bit higher on consensus, I think, than most, but he was taken in the 6th round, 193. But he is 5'10", 230, and his current ADP is 314. I don't expect that to mean anything to anyone, but what I will say is I'm not a huge Chase Brown guy. And I know Zach Moss is not a fan favorite in Cincy. So he might be the number 1 guy I'm looking to add on waiver wires. I'm going to put that out there for everyone not named Aaron Palsgrove or Tyler Hill, because I know they have their ears closed right now and they're saying la, 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 because I swear if someone steals Josh Brooks,
I'm
they're
gonna
gonna
say
have problems.
I'm going to say this, and I don't want you to be offended. I was in the middle of working a trade when you were saying that, and I totally missed who you said the initial name.
Great. Yeah,
Which-
and you'll just skip over this part when you're editing too.
Yeah,
think-
so I do want to. Yeah, go ahead, Tyler.
Well, I was gonna say I think you're okay, Ryan, because my Taj Brooks is Damian Martinez. So
Oh, it was Taj Brooks. Interesting.
I really liked him coming out. I had him, I think, as my 6th running back when we did our running backs episode. Just think he is really talented, breaks a ton of tackles, and just doesn't go down. He's an angry runner. Was blown away that he lasted the 7th round, and don't love the landing spot in Seattle. But I think if you want to stash him on the taxi squad, Kenneth Walker has been hurt a couple times. I'm not a huge Charbonnet guy, just personally in terms of how I value him.
Crazy.
I know Aaron's smiling in the background.
I do. So I do want to say that I know I've defended Charbonnet on a few shows, and that I've said that I have him on my team. I do, but I also believe in Charbonnet as a player. Yeah. And I would say this without him. This is my evaluation of him, not just me being a fan.
Yeah, and so with just me not being as high, I think that could be a nice stash of somebody that is talented, maybe got underdrafted.
My guy for this tier of just our guys is Jordan James. I think that you never know what's going to happen in San Francisco at running back, and I think he's talented enough to make the most of that time. And they got rid of Jordan Mason. Again, you have no idea what's going to happen in San Francisco at running back.
Yeah, you got Garendo, but that's not a tall task.
No, exactly. That's what I'm saying. If you're playing college football 25 and you see like the guys to beat in front of you on that coach trust progression, he's closer to Garendo than you'd think.
Yeah, I just straight up like Jordan James better than Garendo. I think out of camp, he's probably the 2. And then we've seen with McCaffrey, unfortunately, he's had some injury issues. And the reports are that he's back healthy, but are we sure? Because that was kind of the reports going into last year was that he's healthy. So I like Jordan James, too, as a little dart throw there.
Our honorable mentions, Savion Williams in Green Bay, another guy, a 6th in Green Bay, behind that's just receivers entirely. And then Shadur Sanders in Cleveland. Don't take it, Shadur Sanders in Cleveland. You have no idea what could happen. Get him on the waivers. Do not draft him. Don't waste a draft pick. Use your fab. If someone else drafts him, more power to him. That's all we got for today. Stay tuned for social media for our final rankings, and we will be back next week with a really fun episode that I'm very excited about. So thank you all for joining. Mind the gap on your way out.